All right, so health part 2. Social inequality, health and illness is really where we're going to spend the bulk of this for today. Socioeconomic status, race and gender, those 3 major chapters we hit right after the midterm. All of these things have something to do with your health, whether it be your physical health, your mental health, or your social well-being. Remember that definition. So socioeconomic status is where we're going to start. Socioeconomic status is a fundamental cause of health. As your SES increases, so does your overall health. Particularly with education, for every year of education you complete, your health increases, right? Your physical health increases. And so those people with a bachelor's degree are going to be healthier than those people with a high school diploma, and so on and so forth. Now, when it comes to mental health, things get a little hairy. So we see a similar trend, that positive trend, where as every year of education increases, so does your mental health. But then we reach this peak, and that peak is often a bachelor's degree. And as soon as you start getting a master's degree or a professional degree, or God forbid you get a PhD, it just plummets down into the ground. It just plummets. If you're wondering, I'm managing. It's fine. I'm managing. But yeah, your socioeconomic status has a lot to do with your access to care, the networks that you're a part of, whether or not you understand the health information that you're being given. Do you know how to advocate for yourself in the doctor's office? A lot of this is tied directly into your socioeconomic status. Now, race, we have these 2 major bullet points here that I want to cover for the purposes of our class: trust in the system and environment and health. At the beginning of the semester, we discussed the Tuskegee syphilis trial. That alone would be enough to tell you why Black people in the United States should not trust the medical system. Now, I will say we've made some very interesting strides, but I don't know of anybody that's fully come out and apologized for the stuff that we have done here in the United States in terms of Black people and healthcare. So until that happens, medical doctors of the world, when your Black patients do not trust you, it's your fault. It's not theirs. So, one of the examples here is this picture that I have over here, and it is of 3 women who were slaves, Anarcha, Betsy, and Lucy. I believe Anarcha is the one on the table, and Betsy and Lucy are over here. This very ominous human, who obviously knows more than everyone else in the room, is J. Marion Sims. Now, J. Marion Sims has been dubbed the father of gynecology. There have been statues erected of him all over this country, and a lot of those are being taken down because finally people are paying attention to the fact that he did some real shady shit to learn everything he learned about the women's reproductive system. And one of those things was these 3 women in particular. He had a bunch of slave women that he practiced this on. But these 3 in particular, and Anarcha, I think even more so, he just really liked working with them. And by working with them, what I mean is he poked and prodded and removed and re-implanted and just cut them up. Without their consent. He only needed the consent of their owners. And he did a lot of this stuff without any sort of anesthetic. And you might think like, oh, well, was this during a time when we didn't have anesthesia? No, we totally did. We did. But he just didn't think that that was necessary, because why would you do it when you don't view people as people? And then environment and health is another big kicker. If you think about the way that cities are created, where is the dump? Where is the water runoff? Where are the treatment facilities? Where is the bus depot? Where are some of the worst areas to live in terms of the environment? And then look at the racial makeup of all of those areas and who lives in those areas. And more often than not, it is people of color. So our segregation that we have in the United States directly impacts the healthcare of those individuals as well. And then we move on to gender, morbidity versus mortality differences. So morbidity is the number of diseases, mortality is death rate, right? So how many people have died? Men die at a lot younger ages than women do, and women are often diagnosed with, they have higher morbidity, they have more diseases. The reason being is mostly because women go to the doctor and men don't, because men are socialized based on their gender to never ask for help, and they can handle it, and they've got everything, and they can do everything all on their own. Men go to the doctor And then the other reason why women have higher rates of morbidity is not just because they go to the doctor more, but also a lot of the medical conditions are purely because men were physicians and women were patients, and men looked at women and said, my body doesn't do that. That's not natural. That seems odd, and gave it a disease state instead of just going, that's the natural form of women. So yeah, social inequality and health and illness. Medicine as a social institution. I've got some information here for you on the doctor-patient relationship because that's a key form of research for medical sociologists. And in the doctor-patient relationship, it is influenced by the structure of the institution, and in the institution, the doctors are the top and the patients are the bottom. We, as a society, give doctors a lot of status and power, like a lot of status and power. And really amazing doctors recognize that power and do everything in their ability to diminish it and have real conversations with their patients and give them the space to understand their health care. But that is few and far between. Most doctors see themselves as the end-all be-all answer because it's socialized into them throughout medical school. And so I have two examples here, gender and race when it comes to pediatric care and gender and race when it comes to pain. And all of the citations are down there if you want to look into any of this research. So in pediatric care, they found something really fascinating. If a mother comes in with a sick child, often the doctor interacts with the mother and asks them all of the questions. How are they sleeping? How are they eating? Have you noticed any changes in their day? Are they a little lethargic? Do they not want to play? You know, anything you could ask. If the child comes in with the dad, they talk to the kid. They don't talk to the dad. They ask the kid, how are you feeling? Does your tummy hurt? Are you sleepy? You know? And then when we include race into this, it gets even worse. So if a black father comes in with a black child, the doctor doesn't interact with either of them. The doctor gets the vitals and then leaves the room. And so you can easily see how different healthcare is between getting the vitals, interacting with the child, and interacting with the adult in the room versus just getting vitals of the patient, right? Vast differences in care. And all this is implicit bias of the doctors, right? And so doctors really need to start doing the work in terms of recognizing where those biases land and why. Another example of this is with gender and race when it comes to pain management. Historically speaking, men don't believe women's pain, and this is true in the medical institution, and so women can come in and say how much pain they're in, and all of these things, and more often than not, doctors view it as whining or over-exaggerating or whatever. However, men can come into a doctor's office and say, you know, oh, my back's sore, or I have a, you know, what feels like a pinched nerve or whatever. And they're often prescribed very intense pain medicine. And this is one of the ways in which we ended up with the opioid epidemic that we ended up with. There's an overprescribing of pain medication to men in particular, specifically white men, which leads us into race. One of these biases that has been held on since the time of slavery for medical doctors is that black people do not experience pain the way that white people do. There is no reason that that would be scientifically true. It's not. But these biases have been there since slavery because it was used to justify the absolute horrible treatment of black people in the United States during slavery. And so medical doctors help support beating the snot out of the people that worked for you on your farms and your plantations because scientifically black people didn't feel pain the way white people did. There's no science there. There's absolutely none. But we do have research that shows this is something that is still implicitly taught, and medical students today hear it and somehow are also not treating black people's pain management the way they treat white people's. So these are just some common, occurrences we still have today in terms of this. Now, medicalization. This is the thing that's super fun to get into. So you're experiencing the process of medicalization when you experience a problem being defined in medical terms, describing it using medical language, understanding it through the adoption of the medical framework, and then treating it with, hello typo, a medical intervention, right? So it's not just medicine and the healthcare of us as individuals. We also see this completely and 100% in things that have nothing to do with a physical body's health. The economy is one of the best places to see the medicalization process at work. Are we experiencing a healthy economy? What does that even mean, right? This is medicalization and how much control the medical institution has over our way of life. Very recently, they started putting banks through stress tests, right? That's a medical treatment that we're applying to banking institutions, but it's what we do. Medicalization can expand or contract. One of the best examples of this is for a very long time in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, a manual that determines mental health disorders. Being gay was considered mental health disorder. It is no longer considered a mental health disorder. So that's when medicalization sort of contracted. And it can go in both directions, right? So here's some examples, right? And this is how medicalization is a form of social control. If the medical institution can tell you that there's something wrong with you because of a deviant act, which is this violation of norms, if you remember that from way back when, or if it can control all these aspects of your life process, then we can control you in such a specific way that everybody is exactly the same and no one is different because we are treating you through medical interventions. So things like substance abuse, mental disorders, eating disorders, sexual and gender differences, learning disabilities. And one of my favorite examples of this is ADHD. And it's often because college students come in and for the first time in their lives, they decide on their own they don't want to be on the ADHD medications that they were prescribed throughout their entire childhood. And so then they sit in my office with their ADA form and say, hey, I have ADHD. I'm not taking medicine because I don't want to. And I go, neat, how can I help you? And they tell me all the ways in which it works for them to sit through an hour and 20-minute lecture or a 3-hour final exam. And I go, okay, I'll make that work for you. I can do that in a college institution. It's super easy for me. That is not the case in K through 12 public school. And so rather than adapting the structures to fit all learners, we just medicate people. When it comes to life processes, we have anxiety, menstruation, birth control, infertility, childbirth, menopause, aging, and death, and a vast majority of those have everything to do with being a woman, right? And this is this medicalization of just being a woman. And it's fascinating too because you can watch a lot of these drug commercials and see that they take things like anxiety, a mental health disorder, and turn it into this like cartoonish display of, are you sad? Do you need to be happier? Here, take some Xanax, right? So they're selling you this need to control who you are as a person and fit into a box, right? Okay, we're not going to worry about Parsons' sick role. Learn that on your own. It's pretty easy. But bioethics we're going to kind of finish off with. So the right to die. In only certain states do you have access to physician-assisted end-of-life care. You do have access to a do not resuscitate order. And then you should look into Terry Schiavo and see what happened to her. I was a tiny child when this was going on. I know none of my students are definitely did not get to experience it, but it was a big case. The Human Growth Project, Human Genome Project, excuse me. 23andMe is one of those things that you can, swab the inside of your mouth and ship it away and they tell you things. It's really bad science and now they own your DNA. Just don't do it. We experienced remedicalization after we got the Human Genome Project where we noticed all of these genes and went, oh no, could we find a gene for the gay? That's no. But we started thinking about and experiencing some of that remedicalization. Health trackers. If you were incentivized to get a health tracker from your insurance company has access to that data and those health trackers have access to your GPS. And let me tell you, I don't want my health tracker and my insurance company to know how many times I go to Big Spoon and get ice cream. I will be honest, it is entirely too much. It's too much. But I definitely don't need my healthcare institution to know that. Now, stem cell research is the last little thing we're going to cover in terms of bioethics. We got religion. You can see that there. It mostly comes from in vitro fertilization discards, right? And then it can help anything from Parkinson's, ALS, cancer, Alzheimer's, sickle cell. The list goes on and on. Some negative things that can occur here is designer babies. And if you want to see that go full out, you can watch the movie Gattaca. It's pretty great. There's some examples of it in other TV show that's not coming to my brain right now, but it's okay. Black Mirror, that's the one. But yeah, so these are some of the bioethical situations that we come up with. So yeah, thank you so much for getting real weird and nerdy with me on medical sociology. I appreciate you all and your attention even on this one. So thank you so much, and I will see y'all in the next video.